Hi, this is Marcus from Aroma Time Bistro, and I want to talk to you about bourbons, especially the bourbons that we offer here at the restaurant. The restaurant really is founded on small batch everything, from our food production to our wine production and through our spirits as well, including our handcrafted American vodkas. So today we're going to talk about bourbons. Now bourbons, it's a whiskey. Specifically, I guess bourbon can come from anywhere in the United States. There's some legal definitions. Most of the bourbon actually comes from Kentucky, originally from Bourbon County, but now that's expanded. As long as they meet certain criteria. For instance, bourbon has to be over 51%, at least 51% corn. Then it can be whatever else at that point. So things that are like rye, like Wild Turkey's a rye, that would never be a bourbon. So bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. It has to be aged in new charred oak. So new oak barrels, oak barrel like this, but inside charred, has to be new charred oak, has to be aged at least 2 years. Has to be a certain proof that when it goes into the barrel, when it goes into the bottle, but it can range up to a certain proof. David, what are some other things that bourbons have to be?
Do they have to put the year on it if it's aged less than 4 years?
Right, the aging. Now most bourbons never commit to an actual age on here because they like to reserve the right to maybe make a 4-year, 5-year, 6-year. But if you do put an age on a bourbon, if you see, like, for instance, like a 6-year-old bourbon, it has to be at least 6 years, and they'll do a little bit of blending in the barrels. Now there are single barrels, and I'll talk about that because we have a couple single barrels here. But if they're doing a 4, 5, 6, 7 year and they're blending it together, then they're only allowed to label it 4 year because you're allowed to label it by the youngest year only. You can't average it out or anything like that, and scotches work like that as well. So let's start with the big brand bourbon. Maker's Mark, Jim Beam. Those are the two big brands. Now of course we have these here at Aroma Time. Nothing wrong with them at all. Jim Beam is a big seller, big brand. Maker's Mark is a little bit of an upsell. I think Maker's Mark is a little better quality than Jim Beam. But now after these two, we have a world of bourbons that you may have never heard of. And that's all of these bourbons right here. So we'll go through these. One of the classics at Aroma Time has been Old Pogue. Old Pogue has been here since we opened, 6 years, 7 years. I've met the owners of this, 3 employees in the place, the father, the son, and I think a secretary. Really small, handcrafted. 9 years. They don't put 9 years on here, but I spoke to them. They said their sweet spot for aging is 9 years. And they said for most bourbon guys, 9 years is key. David, can you hand me down the baby bourbon from Tuttletown as well? So they shoot for 9 years. That's a sweet spot. They say all bourbon makers want to shoot for 9 years. Here's an interesting one that we have right from New York here, from right down the road, Tuttletown Spirits. It's called a baby bourbon. And they don't put a full bourbon on here, they don't put straight bourbon. These baby bourbons are considered a baby bourbon. These are only aged about 6 months, right, Tibor? But they're aged in much smaller barrels. Instead of the big barrels that you see, in the Jack Daniels commercials and the Jim Beam commercials and stuff. These are aged in small, literally like 2.5 gallon barrels, which means they don't have to age it as long because they're having more oak exposure to the actual stuff that's inside, the bourbon that's inside. So they can actually shorten their aging time and basically mimic what they have. Here's an actual barrel that bourbon would have actually been in. Now this is only a 2.5 gallon bourbon, 2.5 gallon oak barrel. Now this is new charred oak. They used it once and that was basically it.
That bourbon came out of that.
That bourbon came out of there, yes. So that's what that company uses, as opposed to those huge oak vats or oak barrels that are, I don't know, 55 gallons or whatever they are. They're pretty huge. So what really contributes to the smoothness of the bourbon is, besides making the alcohol content, obviously lower alcohol is much smoother than anything you drink, but really the aging and how it ages in the barrel is really key, and how it mellows out, and of course the length of the aging time is really the key factor. So we've covered 2, the Old Pogue and that. Next we have Johnny Drum. Johnny Drum is an inexpensive, really awesome bourbon that comes from down there. It's made from one of the bigger distilleries that actually subcontracts the work out. Old Pogue is made at the same place, and a couple of the other ones. If you look at the distilleries in whole, most companies don't have their own dedicated distillery. Some do, but most don't. They actually subcontract out to other distilleries that already have all the equipment and everything, because of course it's bit cheaper and more economical. And they just take their recipe, they meet with the owners and say, I want you to produce this for me. They go through a couple test runs, and of course, once they're good to go, the production's going. For instance, like tequila, there's over 1,000 different tequila brands, but only 100 places that actually distill tequila, which is, you know, of course, there's multiple brands coming out of one distillery. Same concept here. Evan Williams, sort of a larger brand. This is a single barrel, so this comes out of an actual one barrel. That one barrel that we saw here, this would be one big barrel. These are hand numbered, the barrel number's on here. It's a single barrel, it's not blended or anything. Same thing with the Willett family. The Willett family has had a phenomenal reputation for their bourbons for the last 100 years or so. And the grandson actually distills, or is in charge of the place that distills the Willett, and they distill some of the other brands that I was talking about, Johnny Drum. They do, so you know, they're responsible for a couple other brands. I've actually spoken to the grandson, Willett's grandson, and he's explained to me the whole process and everything. I haven't personally been down there, but I hope to be. So these two are actually single barrels. One barrel goes in and puts in the bottles. They're hand numbered. They tell you where they come from. This one's hand numbered as well. Buffalo Trace. This is an extremely popular bourbon. It gets a lot of brand recognition for the smaller batch stuff. Really, really good stuff. Two new ones here that we have, the Rowan's Creek and the Noah's Mill. This stuff is really, really awesome. I don't remember which is which right now. One was just really vibrant and punchy. Got a lot of stuff going on. Really, really incredible stuff. This one here, yeah. And this one was awesome too. Just totally different bourbons, but both really solid, awesome stuff. So when a customer comes in, a guest comes in, they want to talk to you about bourbon, bring them to the bar, pour them a small taste or something, explain to them what we have. When you pull the bottles out for a customer like this, they're like, oh wow, oh my gosh, and they, you know, open up and, you know, take a sniff, and they're really amazed. And customers love. We have a lot of single malt scotches. We have, you know, a lot of different neat things here at the bar. So the idea is we want you as a staff to show these things off to the customers, and don't be afraid if somebody's at a table and say, gee, what bourbons do you have? Do you mind coming? Do you have a couple minutes to come to the bar? I'll run through a couple with you. That impresses customers beyond belief. Now, the neat thing is, if we're busy on a Saturday night, Friday night, or whatever night, and you don't have a table for somebody, and they say, you know, I want a Maker's Mark, you know, whatever, and you know they're going to be a while for their table, now's the time where you can pull a couple other bottles, say, you know, I see you ordered Maker's Mark, I want you to take a sniff or try taste these other ones. Then it stalls time for them to actually pass time and not worry about their table, and it's a great way to do that. Well, you can do that with any of the products here. The last one is Pritchard's Double Barrel. Pritchard's Double Barrel is a bourbon that is aged for 9 years to begin with, and this is the only bourbon that I actually know of that actually does 2 barrel agings. They do 9 years in their first one, and they do 4 years, up to 4 years in the second barrel. And I spoke to Connie from Pritchard's. They're actually down in Tennessee. They're not in Kentucky. They're down in Tennessee. They make some awesome rums and some other things. But Pritchard's Double Barrel, and I would say this is probably our best-selling bourbon here. It's just, the quality is incredible. The quality is incredible on all this stuff, but the double barreling does make a difference. 9 years in the first barrel, up to 4 years in the second barrel. And we've had a lot of converts on this one. So I hope this helped you guys with bourbon, because we have a lot of different bourbons here, and by the time you watch this video, we might even have 1 or 2 more. We might not have the full selection here, but because we're always evolving, we're always looking, and we're always really expanding. So when a customer comes in, it's very important to understand what bourbon is, first of all, and then all the offerings that we have. Remember, basic bourbon, it's over 51% corn. It's aged in new charred oak, and it's
no artificial coloring.
No. One of the rules is no artificial coloring. No caramel coloring goes into these. Some scotches and everything, some big brand scotches that you see, those are all caramel colored. So it's a little deceiving sometimes. So by bourbon by law cannot have any caramel coloring in it. So hope this helps you guys with your bourbon lesson education, and thanks.